You meet someone new. They're attractive, funny, confident, easy to talk to, and everyone around you seems to notice something you don't. There's no spark, no butterflies, no sudden pull toward them. Not because you're shy, not because you're nervous. You simply don't feel sexual attraction. Now take that feeling and make it universal. What if humans never felt sexual attraction at all? No one looked across a room and felt instantly drawn to someone. No crush that made your heart race. No wondering whether someone was flirting with you. No awkward first date where both people are secretly trying to figure out if there's chemistry. At first, that might sound like a pretty peaceful world. Less rejection, less jealousy, less heartbreak. But then think about your own life for a second. What would dating even mean? How would people choose partners? Would marriage still look the same? Would romance become completely different? And here's where the question gets uncomfortable. Because sexual attraction isn't just something that happens in your head. Human relationships, reproduction, dating culture, entertainment, advertising, and even the way people think about beauty are all connected to attraction in one way or another. Remove it, and you're not just changing who people want to date. You're changing one of the forces that has shaped human behavior for thousands of years. And suddenly, some things we treat as completely normal start looking incredibly strange. Why would someone flirt? Why would anyone care about being attractive? Why would people get jealous? And if nobody ever felt that pull toward another person, how would the next generation even begin? Because the weirdest consequence of a world without sexual attraction might not be what happens to dating. It might be what happens to human reproduction itself. And once you follow that question, the world starts looking very different. Here's the first thing that would change. You'd still meet people. You'd still notice that someone is funny, confident, kind, smart, or good-looking. You could still develop a crush. You could still fall in love. But one specific feeling would be missing. That instinctive sexual pull toward another person. And that's important because sexual attraction isn't exactly the same thing as romance, love, or even sexual desire. These experiences can overlap, but research treats them as distinct parts of human psychology. So imagine a date in this world. Two people are sitting across from each other. The conversation is great. They're laughing. They want to see each other again. But there's no hidden question in the back of either person's mind. Are we attracted to each other? That question simply doesn't exist. And at first, that might sound like a relief. No wondering whether someone is into you. No trying to read their body language. No getting rejected because the chemistry wasn't there. No spending an hour before a date wondering what to wear because you want someone to find you attractive. But then you notice something much stranger. A huge part of human dating culture is built around attraction. Flirting, dating apps, pickup lines, physical compliments, jealousy, trying to stand out from everyone else. Even decisions about who people choose as partners can be influenced by mate preferences and attraction-related cues. Now take sexual attraction completely out of the equation. Dating apps could become almost unrecognizable. Instead of swiping because someone is hot, people might sort potential partners by personality, humor, values, lifestyle, intelligence, or how easy they are to get along with. A profile picture could still matter, but not for the reason it does today. And suddenly, one of the world's biggest industries has a problem. What exactly are you selling when nobody wants to look sexually desirable? Fashion still exists. Beauty products still exist. People still want to express themselves, but an enormous part of appearance-based competition could lose its purpose. And here's the part that changes everything. If nobody feels sexual attraction, you don't just remove flirting. You remove the internal motivation that normally pushes people towards sexual relationships. That doesn't automatically mean nobody would ever have children. Humans could still form relationships. They could still decide to become parents. Technology could still make reproduction possible. But a behavior that once happened because two people felt an intense biological pull would now require a completely different reason. And that raises the first truly uncomfortable question. If nobody ever felt that pull, who would actually choose to have children? Because once you remove sexual attraction, the survival of the next generation becomes a very different problem. Now take that question one step further. If nobody ever felt sexual attraction, having children would no longer be connected to sexual chemistry. That doesn't mean humans suddenly stop loving each other. People could still fall in love. They could still want companionship. They could still build families. But one huge reason people form sexual relationships would simply be missing, and that changes the whole process. Think about dating in this world. Two people meet. They get along. They laugh for hours. They genuinely care about each other. Then comes the question, do we want kids? Today, that decision can happen inside a relationship where sexual attraction already exists. In this world, there is no automatic biological pull pushing people in that direction. So having a child could become much more deliberate. You might literally sit down with your partner and decide, do we actually want to become parents? That sounds simple, but multiply that decision across an entire population, and the consequences get huge. If fewer people choose to have children, populations could shrink. Schools could have fewer students. There could be fewer workers entering the economy. Entire cities could become older. And governments might start doing something very unusual, trying to convince people to have kids. Tax breaks, free childcare, paid parental leave, housing benefits, maybe huge public campaigns encouraging people to start families. Because the challenge wouldn't be convincing people to have sex. There would be no sexual attraction to begin with. The challenge would be convincing people that raising a child is worth choosing. And here's where technology becomes important. Human reproduction doesn't necessarily have to depend on sexual attraction. If people still produce eggs and sperm, assisted reproduction could remain possible. People could use fertility clinics, stored genetic material, in vitro fertilization, or future reproductive technologies that are much more advanced than anything we have today. So humanity might not disappear, but something fundamental would change. Sex would stop being one of the pathways that naturally connects attraction, relationships, and reproduction. And once that connection breaks, society starts rewriting the rules around dating, marriage, family, and even what it means to be a couple. Because now imagine a world where a person can be deeply in love with someone and still feel absolutely no sexual pull toward them. Suddenly, a question that sounds strange today becomes completely normal. Can you love someone without ever wanting them sexually? In our world, that can already happen. In this one, it could become the foundation of almost every relationship. And that changes the next thing, marriage. Now imagine getting married in a world where nobody feels sexual attraction. You meet someone. You trust them. You love being around them. You know they understand you better than almost anyone else. So you get married. But the reason for marriage is completely different. There's no sexual chemistry pulling the relationship forward. No physical craving that suddenly makes one person feel different from everyone else. Instead, marriage could become almost entirely about companionship, loyalty, teamwork, family, and emotional connection. At first, that sounds pretty straightforward. But then one of the biggest questions in human relationships changes. What would actually separate a marriage from a really close friendship? Today, people can define that boundary in a lot of different ways. Sexual attraction is one of them. Romantic attraction is another. Shared goals matter. So, does emotional intimacy. But in this world, one major ingredient is simply gone. And that could completely change how people understand commitment. A couple might live together for decades without ever thinking that something is missing. Because nobody expects sexual chemistry. Nobody waits for the spark. Nobody asks whether the relationship is passionate enough. The entire idea of a dead bedroom might not even exist. There would be nothing to compare it to. And that creates a weird psychological shift. Something that would feel like a problem in our world could be completely normal in theirs. But marriage isn't the only thing that changes. Jealousy changes too. Think about the classic situation. Someone at a party keeps talking to your partner. They're laughing. They're standing close. In our world, that can trigger all kinds of emotions. You might wonder, do they like my partner? Does my partner like them? Is something happening here? But if nobody can feel sexual attraction, the meaning of that interaction changes. Your partner can still betray your trust. They can still lie. They can still fall in love with someone else. They can still choose to leave. But one major source of jealousy is gone, and that could make relationships calmer, or just create entirely different kinds of insecurity. Maybe people become more protective of emotional attention instead. Maybe the thing that hurts most isn't, do you want them? It's, Do you care about them more than you care about me? That's a very different kind of jealousy. And now the world of dating becomes even stranger. There would be no need to make yourself sexually attractive. No dressing to get someone's attention. No flirting to create physical tension. No trying to look desirable just because you're hoping someone will want you. That doesn't mean people stop caring about appearance. They might still want to look stylish, healthy, attractive in a non-sexual way, or simply impressive. But one enormous reason people compete over appearance disappears. And that could completely reshape fashion, beauty products, dating apps, advertising, and even celebrity culture. But there's an even bigger consequence. Because if sexual attraction disappears, what happens to the billions of dollars built around helping humans attract each other? Suddenly, the world isn't just changing emotionally. It's changing economically. And that's where this weird little thought experiment starts affecting almost everything around you. Now think about everything around you that is designed to help people look desirable. Dating apps built around photos. Fragrances marketed as irresistible. Clothes designed to turn heads. Gyms selling the promise of a more attractive body. Movies built around chemistry between two characters. Songs about wanting someone. Ads showing beautiful people getting closer. And in a world where nobody feels sexual attraction, a huge part of that language stops making sense. You can still look good. You can still want to feel confident. You can still care about your appearance. But the question changes. Instead of, will they want me? It becomes, do I like how I look? That's a massive psychological shift. Today, some people spend years comparing themselves to other people because they want to be seen as attractive. They change their hair, their clothes, their body, their face, sometimes even their personality. Now remove sexual attraction completely. There is no prize at the end of that competition. Nobody is secretly choosing between you and someone else based on sexual chemistry. And that could change beauty standards in ways we can't fully predict. Some things might become less important. Other things could become more important. Maybe status replaces sex appeal. Maybe humor becomes more valuable. Maybe confidence matters more than physical appearance. Maybe people stop asking, am I attractive enough? And start asking, am I interesting enough? But then comes the biggest problem. Humanity still needs a way to continue. And if sexual attraction is gone, reproduction becomes something people have to choose for a completely different reason. That could make having children far more deliberate. A couple might fall deeply in love and still never feel any desire to have sex. So parenthood could become a separate decision. Do we want children? Are we ready? Should we use assisted reproduction? Could a society built around deliberate reproduction eventually develop systems that make having children easier, safer, and more planned than today? Maybe. But there's another possibility. Some people might simply choose not to have children. Then population growth slows. Generations become smaller. Schools shrink. Some industries struggle to find workers. Governments become desperate to encourage families. And suddenly, something that today is intensely personal becomes an economic problem. That might be the biggest twist in this entire scenario. We think sexual attraction is mainly about romance, dating, desire, but remove it from humanity completely, and its effects could reach into population growth, economics, culture, and the future of civilization. And that means the weirdest question isn't, would people still fall in love? It's this. Could human civilization stay the same if nobody ever wanted anyone sexually? So, what actually happens when sexual attraction disappears from humanity? People would still love. They'd still form friendships, build deep relationships, fall in love emotionally, and want companionship. But one powerful force would be missing. That instinctive pull that can turn a stranger into someone you can't stop thinking about. Without it, dating could become calmer, maybe less confusing, maybe less painful, but also much more deliberate. People would have to choose relationships for different reasons. And having children could become a decision rather than something connected to sexual attraction. That could affect population growth, family structures, culture, entertainment, beauty standards, and entire industries built around making people desirable. And that's the biggest twist. We usually think sexual attraction is just about sex. But remove it completely, and suddenly you're changing how humans choose each other. what they value, what they compete for, what they fear losing, and maybe even why they decide to create the next generation. So if nobody ever felt that pull, the world wouldn't simply become less romantic. It would become a different kind of human society. And the strange part is, people in that world might look at us and think we are the unusual ones. And if you want to explore another everyday human behavior that completely shapes the way we see ourselves, the video on the left asks what the world would look like if humans never started wearing clothes. And if you want to go even deeper into the biology of the human body, the video on the right explores what life could look like if women never had periods. Pick the one that makes you most curious and keep going.